Hello and welcome to this episode of The Sovereign Shift. My name is Chelsea Eden Dubois. I am the host. Um, Today's guest turned one of the most painful public moments of her life into a portal to.
Thanks for being here. If something stirred within you today, that's not an accident. It's a shift. To go deeper, visit thesovereignshift.ca, where you'll find breathwork audios, resources, mini courses, workshops, and programs to support your reclamation, body, mind, and soul. Like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and toss us a follow on social media if you're so inclined. And remember, your breath is your power. Your truth is your compass. Your sovereignty is the revolution. Until next time, stay sovereign.
Power, purpose, and prose. That's right, prose, like novels. NG Avant is a storyteller, a mother, a witchy woman, and a former insider in the system who now writes characters that burn that system down. We're going to talk about nervous system truth, spiritual reauthoring, feminist rage, and the sovereign magic of fiction. But before we do that, I just want to quickly add some more context and color to this conversation. So, prior to my own spiritual awakening, I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a writer, or so I thought. It was the dream that I nurtured alongside a misery that I found in my professional life. So I treated writing as a dream when really it was just I actually wanted to use it as an escape hatch. And so I actually just really like the concept of writing. And in fact, it was this realization that this dream was not actually for me that helped precipitate the opening of the portal to my true self and what I'm actually here to do. And so it was really, really interesting talking to her about this because we also have very similar paths working in communications and government, and all that good stuff, throat chakra, power, and all that, all the things that come with a career in that realm. And we talked about so many things that I think are really important to the conversation around women empowerment, women's sovereignty, spirituality, the whole thing. And so I really hope that you get a lot out of this conversation and that you really fall in love with the characters and the worlds that she's birthed into creation. And not only that, but start to think about your own journey and how you can process in real time the circumstances and conditions of life that might be really trying. Especially, I find that this year has been a heavy year for a lot of people, if not most. And so she's really kind of put out there a way of managing life's difficult moments in a way that I never considered, which was using writing as a means of healing, not just journaling. And so, uh, please give it a listen. It's pure gold, in my opinion. But before we get started, I just want to invite you to uh, get comfortable. Get comfortable in your chair. Um, no matter where you are, whether you're listening to this in your car, whether you're listening to it around the house, doesn't matter. Just take a moment for yourself. Just check in. Take a deep breath in through the nose and fill the belly, the chest, the upper lobes of your lungs. And let that breath out through the mouth, all the way. Just release everything in this moment that might be keeping you from yourself, your most authentic self, most regulated self. And take another deep breath in. And let that breath out. And I'll get you to do this one or two more times. And this is just a way to sort of set the scene for today's transmission, for today's show. Because I really want the Sovereign Shift to be more than just a podcast, more than just a show. I want it to be not a show. I don't like that word, actually. I want it to be an experience, something that you come to feel refreshed and renewed and inspired. And for me, those things begin and end with the breath. I always, in my teachings, I say that there are three things with breath work that I adhere to, and that's awareness, intention, and technique. We bring awareness to ourselves. We do breath work with focused intention. And then we apply a technique that's outside the realm of our normal breath. And so, with that said, I want you to think about an intention that you have for just showing up and listening to this episode. May this episode be a practice in itself, a way to download some of the creativity and divine expression that is provided by NG. She was such a beautiful soul to talk to, and I'm so blessed to be able to do this, actually. So witness her and witness yourself as you take in this co-creation. I will see you on the flip side.
Welcome to The Sovereign Shift, the podcast for women ready to reclaim their voice, their nervous system, and their power in a world that demands they stay small. I'm Chelsea Eden Dubois, founder of The Sovereign Shift, creator of Woo Breathwork, and your guide on this breath-led journey into sovereignty of self, system, and spirit. Each episode, I sit down with powerful women, thought leaders, everyday revolutionaries, and allied voices to explore the real, raw, and radical path to embodied sovereignty. We talk about stress, burnout, addiction, motherhood, balance, sexuality, leadership, and breath-led spiritual awakening. And yes, we go deep into all things woo, the divine feminine, altered states of consciousness, intuition, ritual, and the parts of womanhood that have been exiled or dismissed as too much by patriarchal systems. Here, truth is medicine, breath is power, and your sovereignty, non-negotiable. Let's begin.
Welcome to this episode of The Sovereign Shift. Today, I have the privilege and pleasure of speaking with indie author NG Avant, who is here today to talk about her process of storytelling. I believe she's got a new series coming out, which is very witchy and woo, so we're going to get into that, but we're also going to get into so much more about storytelling and some of I think the decentering of the male experience in fiction, which I think we want to hear a lot more about. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Welcome, NG. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's
Yeah,
an
it's
honor.
it's my absolute pleasure. So let's just dive in. So you came from a political communications background. So why don't you just tell me a little bit about what took you from that place to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to school for journalism, so I did a little bit of that, and that's how I ended up working in politics when I first moved here to Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada. So there's a lot of politics here. And I had a pretty toxic and traumatic experience. I went into it pretty naive. I grew up very community minded. You know, my mother was on the parent teacher board, my dad a teacher, and he was the coach for the rugby team, and my mom was really always very involved in the community. So I was very excited to be working in politics when I first got hired, but was rather disillusioned to see the sexism and misogyny that was still very running rampant in political halls. I had a particularly traumatic experience, and with a veteran city councilor. This was somebody that had been working in politics and municipal politics for I think like 25 years, 25 years when I first started working for them. And after I had already left, a story came out talking about um, an experience that somebody that was interviewing to work in his office had. And then it just kind of that opened a can of worms. More and more women spoke out about their experiences with this particular city councilor, and I was one of them. So when I was going through the process of working with the integrity commissioner, which is when it comes to municipal politics and any complaints or around misconduct or just complaints in general when it comes to elected officials. The integrity commissioner is the one that will complete the investigation. So through that process, I started to write some of my experiences in an email to the integrity commissioner, and I found that to be very cathartic. So um, the experience that I had in that office was traumatic. And then the experience of going through the process of trying to get justice, of trying to hold him accountable for what happened, was even more traumatic in a lot of ways. In the end, he ended up keeping his position, even though the integrity commissioner had found that he had committed incomprehensible incidents of harassment towards his staff and towards people that were just applying for jobs. That's how brazen he had become, that he wasn't even taking time to really groom people the way that I had experienced. So, so it was disheartening to go through that process. And in the end, he kept his job. Nothing could be done. That's why I started some advocacy along with other survivors to get changes made to the Ontario Municipal Act to hopefully stop this from happening in future. Um, but to to go back to why I started writing was it was such a cathartic experience to kind of process some of what had happened through writing it down. And then it was really, like I said, disheartening, the injustice, the lack of accountability. So this is where the idea of this fictional world came to be, was I was processing what had happened, as well as rewriting the story, because in my story and what happened to me, I didn't really see justice. I went through the integrity commissioner process. I also went through an Ontario Provincial Police investigation, and in the end no charges were laid. So I didn't see any accountability for what happened to me. But through these stories, through this fictional world, I was able to bring accountability forward. I was able to change yes, it's very honest in what actually happens in the real world. It is a mirror of what we see happen in the real world, but I've infused it with hope because in the end, in my series, the Capital City series, there is a semblance of justice in the end. Things do work the way that they're supposed to work, you know? Um, so it was really empowering for me to use fiction to take back my story. My main character, Calista Caldwell, is way cooler than me. She reacted in ways that I wish that I had. She's way stronger. She's way braver than I ever was in those circumstances. So again, it's like it's an empowering way to rewrite some of my own experiences. Now, it is a fictional story, and so when I was planning it out, I took what was in the headlines at the time. So Donald Trump had just been elected president the first time, and the Jeffrey Epstein had just been arrested and stuff like that. So I took inspiration from what was happening in politics at the time, and planned out this capital city series. So it's infused with some of my lived experience. It's infused with some of the things that I was seeing in the news. And then I wrapped that all up into this three-part series, the capital city series: consumed, corruption, and courage. And by the end of the story, I I hope that readers will feel a sense of empowerment instead of disillusionment in our current systems, because it is very real and raw about what our current systems are like.
Ugh. First of all, I just want to acknowledge your bravery and courage for coming forward. The
Thank you.
experience of women in these types of situations where not only is there a power imbalance, but the person who's the perpetrator is also well known and well connected, right? That is the that's the centered male experience typically.
Mhm.
So I can't even imagine what that felt like for you. And so thank you again so much for sharing your story. And again, I just want to reiterate the courage that it took to come forward. And when you say that your character isn't as cool as you, I disagree. She comes from you, right? Your
Oh,
source.
thank
Your
you.
source. So let's talk a little bit about that actually. Because there's a couple different things at play here, right? Where they say that truth is stranger than fiction. How do you think about that when it comes to your series?
Well, I from what I've heard described back to me from readers, like it's a very emotional experience, because I think that even though maybe the experience isn't exactly the same for readers that's in the book, it still triggers their own similar experiences to them. So there is, in that sense, there is a lot of truth in it, because I think a lot of women, especially women working in male dominated industries, know what it's like to feel like, oh, am I overreacting? Having to kind of tolerate casual harassment
Right.
all the time, and if you call it out, then you're the problem, right? You're the one that's difficult. um and having to, like, the books are written in first person, so you're actually in the character's head, and you see the way that she wrestles with this, the way that she almost gaslights herself in a way, like tries to rationalize away how her reactions to which are very normal reactions to being disrespected, right? So that piece of it is very real. It's very, I think it cuts deep for a lot of people that have been in similar situations, where they've had to just tolerate disrespect or harassment or abuse or toxicity being sent their way. Um, and and I think it's important that we talk about it in a real way. I subscribed for a long time to, like, try and keep things positive, try and keep things light. And there is something to be said about finding the gratitude in situations. But what ended up happening was I was just suppressing all of these emotions,
Mhm.
right? And so that's why through storytelling, I'm trying to teach people about what's actually occurring to, in my case, from my lived experience, to women working in these male dominated industries. And I also touch on all sorts of, like, societal issues. As I started doing research, I just learned more and more about the way that marginalized communities are treated in society. And we've made a lot of progress, a ton of progress, but there's still more work to be done. So through these stories, I'm really trying to highlight these 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 real world issues and real world solutions, how we can do this in a way that is that is inclusive, that brings everyone into the fold, so that because everyone has a right to being treated with respect, with dignity. At least that's my belief. I don't think that's something that you need to earn. I think that's just by being alive on this planet and being a fellow human, we are all entitled to dignity. We are all entitled to a certain level of respect and understanding and compassion and love. We're all deserving of love, you
Hmm.
know?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm curious to know, I'm assuming your readership is mainly women, but I'm assuming there's probably where I'm going with this is you specifically write, you said to sort of decenter the male experience, right? Like they're in the story obviously and that kind of thing, but I wonder if you've ever experienced pushback because of that. Because I know that in some of my offerings, for example, when I've provided, say, like a workshop and there's been a man present, um, the feedback that I've received, anytime it's been negative, it's always been, well, if there's a male present and you're just talking to women, blah blah, you know what I mean? Like there's pushback against that, which always makes me laugh because that's the maleness like pushing back against not being the center of attention. And I'm just curious if you've run into any of that yourself.
So far, I completely validate that. I think that, and I don't blame men. Like when you grow up in a society where that is the way that you are treated, and then there's always this argument of like, well, if you really want equality, then why are these women only spaces and stuff like that? But it doesn't take into account the very real statistics around women and feeling safe around men. Like the reason why there are these women-centered spaces or women-only spaces is so that they can feel safe in these spaces because as like statistically speaking, men are the perpetrators of more violence against women than other women.
Yeah.
So that's why that like it's not because we're like hating on men. It's more out of a necessity type of thing. It's because we have been left out of the conversation for so long, and I know for me, for example, I was born in the 80s. I'm part of one of the first generations of women that was born into a world where I could have my own bank account, where I could have a credit card on my own without having a father or a husband that signs off on it, right? So this is still very new, the level of independence that women have, is specifically financial independence, because women were financially dependent on men for so long. And as a result of that, I think that's what created this men-centered, in a capitalist society, this man-centered world was because we had no choice but to center them and because we needed them to survive. We didn't have a house, we didn't have a roof over our head. We didn't have food without them because we needed money. So I think that men are still getting used to this idea of women having this level of independence. Um, and women finally saying like we're not going to tolerate this violence that we've had to tolerate, by telling each other like, oh, you got to stay away from this guy, like through gossip, right, which was also demonized. Um so and when it comes to my writing, I think men just aren't picking up my books as much, which is a shame, honestly, because I think it would help give a lot of perspective if they're open to it, right? If they're open to trying to understand what the experience is like, it might be a great way to like start a conversation with the women in your lives, with your wife, with your sister, with your mom, especially with your mom who grew up in a time where women were first starting to enter the workforce, but there were still, we weren't quite there yet. There was like there was this expectation that you're going to work, but also still do all the things in the house and, that kind of thing. So, I hope that more men pick up my books, but so far it's been mostly women that are reading my books.
Yeah, I actually really, really appreciate that perspective because you touch on something that I think human beings tend to forget, which is we're so quick to rush to judgment, right? Of okay, well, like why can't he see it from my perspective? Like I'm the victim here and blah blah blah. But you're talking to someone who literally has no sense of your reality and has had no reason to try to step into that reality. And there's I do believe that at the table of life, everyone has a place, including the perpetrators, including the victims, including everybody, right? Because, zooming out on the story, the greater human story, we're all here to learn. We're all here to evolve. And this period of time, I think, is one of reckoning, one where women are awakening to the divinity within, to their power within, but it's happening while we're still existing in systems that were not meant to carry that, to hold that energy, right? And so we're seeing this on social media where now it's like tarot and witchy woo stuff is like kind of everywhere, and now stories like yours are coming alive, right? You're discovering old ways of healing through storytelling, right? Where, you had the medicine women that carried the lineage and story and the plant medicines and all like the histories, right? We carried that. So did the men, right? But there were two different strains, two different lines of that lineage, right? But they were equal and both important. And we've forgotten about the matriarchy, right? And so I just think it's so amazing and so cool that you bring that perspective of compassion and balance to it all, understanding that yeah, they're used to being centered for so long because our human lives and memories are so short that we don't really remember we remember it in the inner part of our world that we tap into when we do storytelling and we do nervous system regulation and all that stuff, right? But um I'm so curious, so as you were writing the book, so that would was that kind of your way of self-regulating and like coming home to yourself, or did you have any other practices that helped you kind of return to yourself?
That series, I say that series is what was my healing journey. Writing that series was definitely part of my healing journey. And there were times where I was really inspired and it was just like magic. Like I was channeling learnings, like you're saying, because I really do believe that storytelling is a form of like for a long time, that's how you would learn is through storytelling that, like you said, that was passed down through generations. And then it started being written, but it's still, you know, stories are being told and they are learnings. So it was very cathartic. But there were days where I didn't feel like writing. I think that's just normal. So I did start to build like this whole experience of deciding to write that debut novel. I was still working full time at the time. Actually, I was technically on my maternity leave, but I did go back to work. And going from there to finally deciding to do this full time, this whole this whole arc of writing this series has been about my healing because I've tapped into using moon energy and the moon to for goal setting. So what I would do is on a new moon, I'd say, okay, I want to write up to this chapter by the end of this moon cycle. And I would do some divination card work, which I know when people talk about divination cards, tarot cards, oracle cards, all that kind of thing, people typically think of like somebody with a crystal ball and you're learning your future and stuff, which, I think that there is something to be said about being tapped in and being intuitive. But the way that I use divination cards, it's more about introspection. It's about self-awareness. I use the images in the card as more of a tool to maybe bring things up from my subconscious up to the surface to deal with them, to really look at them and wonder, okay, what's something that maybe is bothering me right now? Where what's a priority for me right now that I don't really realize? Or how am I feeling? Because I think we're a lot of the times we don't even know how we're feeling, and being able to identify like what emotion you're having in that moment using divination cards for introspection has really helped me. It's almost been like a therapy in a lot of ways, which maybe that's a controversial thing to say. But again, it's just been so helpful for that introspection piece as I'm going into this next moon cycle, with goals in mind, not just around my writing, but like my personal goals. It's helped me with like building habits, and which ultimately, when it comes to goal setting, like it's really about your daily habits. What are you doing every day towards those goals that you're trying to achieve? Are you the type of person that achieves those goals? Like if you want to run a marathon, well, the type of person that runs a marathon go trains, they go for jogs, like you have to build those repetitive habits, good habits to like lead up to those goals. So with the new moon, I view that it's almost like, on New Year's Day, how you've got that like that feeling of like replenishment, it's new year. I get that with every new moon, it's like a new year, right? Because it's like a fresh moon cycle, fresh page. Okay, what am I doing this moon cycle? And then on the full moon is all about release, right? So when I'm looking at the full moon, I think about what I'm grateful for. I check in on my goals. How am I doing? Is there something that maybe I need to focus on? Is there something I need to move into the next moon cycle? That kind of thing. What do I need to release? What what gunk is holding me back right now that I can release with this full moon? And then at the end of the moon cycle, when it's another new moon, I reflect on everything that happened over this moon cycle. What were the lessons? What were the joys? What am I most grateful for? And it was from writing that I started doing, right, wanting to get my manuscript done before my maternity leave was over, that I started doing this practice, which I just kind of invented. I don't know, there might be something out there already, but this is just something that has really helped me. And I find that I am much happier now. My life is the most aligned it's ever been with what I actually want to be doing with my life, not what society says I should be doing with my life. It's just been incredible tapping into myself, what I actually really want, my authentic dreams, which I always wanted to be a writer, even though I'm dyslexic. I loved reading, I loved storytelling. Um, and I decided like in my early 20s that I was going to write a book. I didn't get to it until I was, in my 30s, but I did it. I did it. I'm really proud of myself for doing that. So yeah, sorry, I've kind of gone on a little tangent there, but
No,
it's been yeah, so yes, it's been very healing. Writing has healed me in ways that I am so grateful for, and I don't know that I can actually describe fully.
I think that's so fascinating as someone who always wanted to write myself as well. The biggest thing I struggled was actually doing the writing. I think I like the concept of writing more than actually doing it. But it sounds like what you've tapped into is, and we kind of talked about it in the before we hit record, I guess, on the interview, but it's about how I do really think, and in my perspective is that when you are writing, when you're sitting down to write, you are in effect channeling. There's I don't believe there's any such thing as fiction. It's coming from somewhere. You're tapping into a timeline of you where it's an outcome that's one that was maybe a little bit more preferable, but just not experienced in this 3D realm, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
that's interesting. Yeah.
And so and especially when you combine it, I think, with your divination, right? You're bringing stuff up to the subconscious, which is what we do with breathwork too, right? I think you also said that you've tried breathwork, and that's
I
what
have, yeah.
you've turned writing into a nervous system regulation event, which is
Hmm.
so incredibly cool. And I've never heard about it before, but you should definitely make a framework for your writing process because I think that so many people could benefit from it, especially the use of tarot. to focus on that introspection instead of future seeking, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it's about grounding,
Yeah.
really. And breath work is a lot to do with that. And actually, it's funny you should say that because I turned what I do into a moon journal that
No way.
yeah, so it's available and it's the same thing and it's for a full year and you
Okay.
look at like what you want to accomplish at the beginning of the year and then it has pages that you can write in for 13 moon cycles, which is a full year. And then at the end, you actually reflect on the full year and like those bigger goals that you set at the beginning around your core values, et cetera, et cetera. You can reflect on, okay, what did I achieve from this at the beginning? Okay, and what am I still working towards? Because really, when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to getting to where you want to be, living the life you want to live, it's taking a look at the big picture and then chunking it out. How like turning it into to smaller, more manageable steps, small wins, so that it keeps you motivated. Because I
Mhm.
think sometimes when we're looking at that kind of work, we can get really ambitious and be like, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in a month or whatever. And then you don't. And then you're like, well, I might as well give up. I'm going to go eat a tub of ice cream to make myself feel better. So instead of doing that, you through this moon cycle and checking in on yourself every 2 weeks, you're creating little easy goals. So maybe you start with, I'm going to walk 10 minutes a day.
Mhm.
And then you move up to, I'm going to the gym 3 times a week, that kind of thing. So that way you're slowly, it doesn't have to happen overnight. You're slowly working towards that dream lifestyle, that dream life, that dream version of you that you want to be. So so yeah, it's this is basically what I do in a book because it helped me. It transformed my life. I also talk about like block scheduling. I'm neurodivergent, being dyslexic. So
Okay.
block scheduling, working for myself has been huge. I don't know if you've heard about block scheduling.
Little bit, little bit. Yeah.
But basically, it's like what you do in school, how you have a subject
Right.
for different blocks, and then you have your lunch block. So it's like that, but you focus on certain projects. Like I'm gonna work on emails for this. I'm gonna write for 90 minutes during this block. I'm gonna have a nap, do a meditation, and go for a walk during my lunch break in this block. So you're scheduling in that self-care. You're scheduling in the work and it really helps me. And when you talk about breath work, can I talk a little bit about my experience with it? Because
Please
it was
do.
it was transformational. It was
It's one of
really
my
cool.
favorite topics, so.
So it was I, you almost go into a trance, right? And the breath worker, the facilitator, um, she had us like speak to past versions of ourselves. And I bawled my eyes out, first of all, but in like the best way, because I saw it, there was like flashes of different versions of me that I just embraced. And I loved that version. Thank you for teaching me these lessons. You did it, you survived. And it was just so freeing in the end. I came out of that experience once you were out of that trance, just feeling like $1 billion, like I just felt incredible, like light. Oh, it was amazing. I love breath work. And you use breath work, at least I try to with my kids. I have 3 daughters. If they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling their big feelings, breathing, allow it, like there's scientific evidence. I'm preaching to the choir, but you're getting
Preach.
you're you're self-regulating your nervous system by breathing, by getting oxygen into your lungs so it can go into your bloodstream. Like it's so important when you're feeling really stressed to just take a few like deep
100%.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2. Like it really, really helps with regulating yourself when you're feeling those like big emotions. So I'm a big fan of breath work and writing. I think there's a reason why therapists always tell you to journal.
Hmm.
I think it's like, I don't think I've invented anything here by I'm just doing it in a fictional sense, right? Because it's empowering for me and I love using my creativity in that way. But there's a reason why writing things down, it's like you're taking it, you're not carrying it inside yourself anymore. You're taking it out of your body by writing it down. And that's why journaling is like, it's great. It's a
Yeah.
great practice.
Oh, 100%. Like you're taking, with writing, you're taking something nebulous, right? A thought that you can't see, touch, or smell, and you're putting it into the physical realm, right? And with breathwork, you're doing the same thing. You're bringing stuff from the past up from the subconscious into awareness, the conscious. So it's all different planes of consciousness constantly. And actually, it's funny, I recently did a workshop called Truth to Power, and it's basically that it's teaching women how to regulate during high stakes communications moments where we swallow the words that we want to say because we're afraid to say them. Like it's it's epidemic. You see it everywhere. People, women that they have those survival I mean, you've been through this yourself. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, a
Mhm.
nervous system event, cortisol floods the body, which shuts down the prefrontal cortex. So you're not thinking, you're reacting. And often that reaction is going to do what your ego thinks is going to keep you safe, which is stay silent or avoid, right? I mean, what woman hasn't been in that situation? And so with your children and with mine, like it's a we didn't learn this technology growing up to say like you have the option of saying I just need a second to take that breath and come
Yeah.
back to yourself and say I'm safe in my body to speak my piece. Like my husband, like there's a saying in French, right? You're Canadian, you get it. Prends ta
Hmm.
place. Take your place.
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself, right? Stand up.
Hmm.
And that's why what you're doing, the writing, and then why breath, any nervous system regulation modality that you use, I don't care what it is, right? You pick your poison, pick what works for you, because that's what's going to help you stay present and in real time manage the flood of emotion and emotions aren't bad, right? It's all channeling. It's channeling your emotions in a way that feeds your soul and helps you respond to life in a way that's healthy and loving.
Yes, 100%. You said something so key there. Emotions aren't bad. And I think we've been taught that they are, that we're not supposed to be emotional, that we need to be rational, reasonable. But I think they coexist in a really beautiful way, especially when you understand your emotions and you work through them. You don't let them like take the wheel, right? But you work through them, you understand them
Mhm.
so that you're not carrying them like a heavy piece of lead in your heart or your gut. And I think, at least my experience growing up, I was a people pleaser for a long time. I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to, because I was a very energetic, dramatic, happy kid, right? And I learned very quickly that, oh, no, you're disrupting. You need to be make yourself smaller, make yourself quieter. Um, so I carried that with me for a long time. And not until I was in my mid 30s did I really learn how to use my voice and that it's okay for me to take up space in this world. I don't need to make myself small. So, for for women, like going back to this cortisol response, I think we've almost been programmed to do the fawn, to just and in some cases, if we don't, we might end up seriously
Mhm.
in danger. You know, we might end up injured because um physically we're not always the stronger one in the situation, right?
Mhm.
Although now I've been doing strength training and I do kickboxing and stuff, so
Right.
I think I put up an okay fight these
Okay.
days, but
Kick some serious ass. Yeah, that's right. But it's funny, like what you're talking about, it makes so much sense because that's literally the witch wound.
Mm,
That it
mhm,
it's that if I speak my truth, if I take my place, if I am out there and, fully in my embodied self, someone's gonna hurt me. And
mhm.
sadly, that is a reality
Yeah.
still on this planet for many women around the world. Just look at what's going on in the States right now,
Oh, for
right?
sure. It's
Like
scary.
it's scary, it's a reality. And so this is why work like what you're doing. And I really want to talk about your new series as well, because I believe it's very witchy. So why
It
don't we
is witchy.
segue into that? So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're up to?
Well, this one I'm having a lot of fun with. So the Capital City series was all about healing, and this one is being written from my empowered self. And so I'm really leaning into things that were kind of stigmatized growing up. I've always been into astrology. I like crystals. I deeply believe that we're all made up of energy, and it's all about your energy and your vibration and keeping yourself in a positive energy space will attract more positive experiences into your life because like attracts like kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I also really was into Greek mythology as, as a tween, as a preteen. I think also being growing up in the 90s, the craft, practical magic, Fridays, TGIF, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Like I
Uh,
grew up where Charmed, I grew up where there was a lot of like witchy entertainment. And then of course, Harry Potter, the women are considered witches and the men are wizards, which J.K. Rowling decided to gender them for some reason. But I don't want to get into J.K. Rowling. But anyway,
let's leave that for
yeah, let's not open that can of
that's
worms.
on a shelf.
Yeah. Um, but I did grow up reading those books and the movies. And so I've always been into witchiness and again, discovering this tapping into the energy of the moon and learning more about astrology and numerology and just all sorts of like cool. And maybe it's again because I'm neurodivergent and like seeing the pattern recognition, I'm like,
Right.
ooh, so exciting. So
Yeah.
I'm tapping into all of that those kind of personal hobbies, personal interests, and writing about that. So in this witchy series, there's four young women who don't know each other. They happen to all be in Salem, which my brother now lives in Boston. So I have been to Salem a few times since because it's like 45-minute drive from
Right.
Boston to go to Salem. So they all meet up in Salem and they learn that there's a prophecy tied to them and that they can actually go back in time. And so I've written the prequel and that's coming out on Halloween of this
Nice.
year. In the prequel, we're talking the four young women are meeting each other and learning about this prophecy. They're meeting their familiars, so they each have a um, magic keeper, is what I call them, and it's all elemental. So there's an earth witch, an air witch, a fire witch, and a water witch.
Hmm.
Um, and so they're learning that they're magical, and the magic kind of gets set off when they turn 27 on their 27th birthday. So the golden birthday kind of thing. So
Nice.
that's what like
Nice.
sets off the prophecy is that they've all come of age. So they learn that they have this magic. And then the first book, which is going to come out on the new moon or the blue moon, sorry, of May 31st, 2026. Um, it's because they can only travel back in time on a blue moon. So that's going to be their first time jump. And what they're going to be doing is going back in time to try and stop the patriarchy because the patriarchy and capitalism
I love it.
in my novels like Mother Earth is on the brink and in reality Mother Earth like we're already past the point. David Suzuki, who is a well-loved Canadian
Mhm.
scientist in a pretty recent article was quoted saying like, we're too late in terms
Mm,
of climate change and all of that. I mean, he hasn't given up. He later clarified that he hasn't given up, but
right.
the fact is we're not doing enough for, so like the concept is Mother Earth is on the brink of destruction. So these four witches, it's part of this prophecy that they're going to go back in time and stop the patriarchy from ever forming so that Mother Earth doesn't get to this point of where there's all this greed, where there's perfectly good food in dumpsters while there are starving children on the streets
Yeah.
because they didn't have the money to pay for that food, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that is my witchy series, and I'm really, and again, it's it's kind of almost like a feminist revenge fantasy in a way, because I'm empowering myself to smash the patriarchy through fiction. Because
I
time
love it.
travel, as far as I know, doesn't exist, and we can't go back in time and stop the patriarchy from, stop all of these wars, stop all the, I can't do anything about that. But in my book series, I will.
But this is how the snowball of change can get started though too, right? Like we're see you're this I love feminine rage. I love it's divine. There's a purpose to it, right? Because again, you're channeling a reality right now that I think so many people would agree that we really want to see, right? And so we're starting to see this rage kind of bubble up in different places, right? And so I think that people will really resonate with your story. Not only does it include, yes, the millennial things like the crowd, like all of those things that we grew up with, right? The witchy, the woo stuff and that the word woo always ticked me off because it's so stigmatized and we want to take it back, right? Woo doesn't mean stupid, superfluous, and no, it's a very and actually, that's the modality I teach. I call it woo breathwork, which
Nice.
also can mean women owned and operated, right? And it's like taking back that power. So I think that that's such an incredible series, and what fun it sounds like to write, by the way.
Oh, I'm having a
Um,
great time. I'm
I
loving it.
I can only imagine. I'm curious to know, like, what. So you did the first series was all about your healing. I'm curious to know, like, what different truths about yourself have come out as you've been writing this new series.
I think that I'm stronger than I ever knew, that I'm smarter than I thought I was. Um, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, which I talked about briefly when I was in grade 3. And what that meant was I was taken out of class, I went to special ed classes, and because I had a learning difference, I thought that I wasn't very smart
Mm,
for a lot of my life. I thought because I was challenged in certain aspects of learning things traditionally, that meant that I wasn't smart. So, in these last, 5 or so years, and I have to credit some of the people that I worked with when I was working in government. I worked with, and they were all social workers, right? So they were very people-centered people, non-judgmental, all about the wraparound services. Like they are the unsung heroes. There's so many unsung heroes, like nurses, teachers,
hmm
and a lot of these are dominated by women, actually, these professions. But anyway, um, they really helped build my confidence working with them, because I just didn't believe that I was very smart, and they would just slowly, through projects that I would do, I didn't think I was creative. And one of my colleagues was the one that pointed out, "You're very creative, you know that?" And then once I started to tap into that, I'm like, "Oh, wow, I really am. I am creative. I am I actually am pretty good at strategizing and coming up with solutions, and understanding that my dyslexia actually meant that I was really good at seeing the big picture and pattern recognition and all this kind of thing. Um, that for a long time I thought that I was insane because I was seeing these correlations that neurotypical people weren't seeing, but it was because of my my neurodivergency, that I was seeing these connections that others weren't. So now that like I'm more educated about what it means to be dyslexic and neurodivergent, what it I just feel like I'm able to lean into my skills. Yes, I am still flawed. I still have a lot of things that I need to work on for sure. But I was always just focused on those things, on how awful I was, you know?
Mm.
And now I'm not nearly as critical. I give myself more grace than I used to. And so this this series is coming from, like I said before, it's coming from a place of empowerment and a better understanding of who I am as a person. And a person with more confidence too. I have far more confidence and self-worth now than I did even 5 years ago.
Wow. And that's come from, I mean, to me, it sounds like your neurodivergence in this case, I'm assuming it's like many people probably in your shoes, where they're actually a gift, but they're
Totally.
treated like a curse. And it's because people are afraid of what they don't understand, including the individuals who have, the dyslexia or the neurodivergence, right? Like that's really what what would you love to go back in time and tell yourself when you were younger from where you're sitting now?
To believe in myself. I would tell myself to believe that I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was. To really there's this saying that I love, and I'm gonna butcher it. I know I am, but the context of it as is that like the bird does not worry about the branch that it's perched on if it were to break because they know that they have their wings, right? So I would not butcher that, and I would tell my younger self that. And I actually have that posted on my daughter's room because I want her to know that she's 9 years old. She's about to head into that preteen phase where that's where things can really get gooey. So I want her to know that she's to have that confidence. And so much of what I'm doing, like the advocacy work to change the Ontario Municipal Act. And I'm not alone. There are many, many amazing women that are advocating for these same changes. Like I'm so grateful that we're working together towards this change. It's incredible. Um, writing these books that are centered on the woman's experience, that are centered on a woman's her own journey of finding self-worth and everything. And then also this series where women are empowered to save the planet, that women are the heroes, is this other series that I'm working on. I do this all for my daughters
Mm.
so that I can't protect them from the world forever. So I'm going to try and shape it as best as I can with whatever influence, big or small, that I have in this world. I've got to do something to make it safer for them because I don't want them to go through what I went through. If I can avoid that, even in like the 10th degree,
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to do. So they are my inspiration. They are my reason. And I'm also having a lot of fun because I'm talking to them about the witches, and each of the witches are kind of inspired by them as well.
Oh, nice.
So I'm having a lot of fun because kids and their imagination, it's
Yeah.
incredible, right? So, we just talk, it's just, especially with the familiars, with their little animal companions, I'm having so much fun. My eldest daughter loves to draw. She's like offering to draw pictures. It's just so fun. I
Yeah.
just love it. I'm so lucky. I am the luckiest mom in the world. And I think all moms probably feel that, except when they're overtired and overstimulated and overtouched, which is a very real thing. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But overall, I am a very, very, very lucky woman.
So what do you want to see for yourself in the future? Like what's the vision?
If I can continue doing this
Yeah.
and make a living doing this, where I get to make my own schedule. I have time freedom, so I can really focus. I'm divorced, so I have my kids half time. So when my kids are with me, they are my priority. My life revolves around making sure their needs are met. And then when they're with their dad, that's when I'm really focused on my writing and building this, because as an indie author, you're doing everything, right? Like I'm doing all the marketing, I do my accounting, I do
Right.
my social media, I do it all. So yeah, I'm really focused on that side of things. And I have family visiting. I have my brother, like I mentioned before, he lives in Boston. I have a sister who lives in England. I'm half Mexican, so my mom's whole side of the family is in Mexico. So I've had family like visiting over the summer, and I love that I can just plan my work around ensuring that I can spend time with the people that I love, with my friends and with my family, because that's what life's about, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Something that kind of, I'm going to go on a little side tangent here, but if you'll indulge me, something that really was a catalyst for me to leave the steady government job that was well paying and had good benefits. I worked with great people, but I there was a moment of like 3 months where boom, 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 three people died,
Mm.
and 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 unexpectedly. So it really opened my eyes to life is short. We aren't here forever. I'm gonna go for this. I have to go for this. And also like wanting to be able working full time, wanting to be there for my kiddos to like take them to the doctor's appointments or dentist appointments, or I volunteer in my daughter's school, go on the field trips. Being able to do that and work full time in a traditional setting, it's tricky to do that.
Mhm.
So I really having those people pass away so quickly back to back, it was like it really made me reevaluate like what is important in life. What do I need? What do I want to do? And 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 I said, well, I want to write. I want to finish this book series. So that's what like that was which is so sad because it's like so dark really that it was people leaving this plane that inspired me to do this. But again, that's finding the gratitude because it was, it's grief is hard. It's a painful, awful thing,
Painful
um
teacher. Yeah.
but that's the gratitude
Yeah.
that you find in things is it also opened my eyes up to how delicate life really is and to just live the life you want instead of the life that society dictates you should be living.
Yes. So
Thank you for indulging my side
no,
tangent.
I loved it, and that kind of makes me think of something else I'd like to ask about, which is what would your advice be then to a woman who is maybe in the throes of a really complex life scenario where she's not sure what to do. Maybe there's something pulling her towards passion or maybe escape. What would be your advice to someone going through that situation?
One is first and foremost, you are not alone. It can feel very isolating, especially when you're in a complicated situation. You're not alone. Reach out, get that support, reach out to your community. And if you don't have a community because you've been so isolated, there are resources out in the community that you can tap into. You are not alone. There are resources out there that will support you. You don't have to go through this major change alone. And I think that's the scariest part is the change, you know? You don't know what's on the other side. So you know what's going on in your current situation, in your current circumstances. So that's almost like comforting in a way.
Hmm.
At least you know. But being able to take that risk and believe in your ability to make things better on the other side. So those are, I guess, my top two is you're not alone. Tap into those resources, whatever those may look like for you, whether those are friends, family, out in the community, there's tons of resources. We're very lucky, at least here in Canada, to live in a country where there are so many social services out there, and or not-for-profits that are out there that are supporting. Um, so tap into that and believe in yourself. Especially, I know for me, in different circumstances, this feeling that I already had in the back of my head that I wasn't very smart, that I wasn't going to accomplish anything, that I when it came to the case of like the um the politician that I worked for, like they fed into that. I felt like I was lucky that I had that job. Nobody else in the world would ever hire me because I was so incompetent and da 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 da. And it's hard to overcome those feelings. For me, becoming a mother and wanting better for my daughter was what ultimately got me out of that environment and into, and I don't know what I did. I'm so grateful that I ended up in social services because I landed in an environment that was very healing and that slowly started to help build my confidence in terms of um like a professional sense. So I know what it's like to have your confidence eroded over time through repetitive and even in my personal experiences too in relationships, I've been in situations where my confidence was eroded to I am not worthy of love, I am difficult, I am a burden, like all of those things. So I know what it's like to be in that place, but just trust that you can make it through to the other side and it's going to be so beautiful. It's going to be difficult. I'm not saying it's not going to be hard. Change is hard, and it's going to be a battle for a while, perhaps, but you'll make it through. You're going to be fine because you've made it through everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And change isn't as scary as we think. It's hard, but it doesn't have to be scary. It can be fun, an adventure, and it's very freeing. Let me tell you, the freedom I have now, oh, mwah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for a thing. I'm so grateful. I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for it.
You are a sovereign, definitely like a sovereign person. Like the energy, I get that sense so much that you've walked through fire to get to your freedom.
True. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Um, well, I have to say thank you so much for sharing the space with me today. And I'm curious to know how people can get a hold of you, how they can get in touch, how they can buy your books and all that stuff. And I'll make sure this is all in the show notes as well. So why don't you tell me how can folks
Of
reach you?
of course, thank you. Yes, I will plug myself. At NG Avant Author, you can find me on basically all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, Threads, Blue Sky, at NG Avant, ngavant.ca. So NGAV as in Victor, ANT as in Tom, .ca, because I'm Canadian, so gotta rep the CA. That's my website, and you can find all my books are listed there. I also have a blog there. You can sign up for my newsletter, and you get a free prequel to the Capital City series. And yeah, I'd love to see you out on the socials. We can chat. We can discuss smashing the patriarchy together, or the woo-woo stuff. I love it. I'm into it. Like I can talk about astrology and the moon for days. So hopefully I'll see you all there.
Nice. And before I leave you, is there anything at all that I didn't touch on that you'd love to leave listeners with right now?
Um, it's okay to choose yourself. I highly recommend it because by choosing yourself, you're choosing everyone you love around you. As they say, like when you go on an airplane, you have to put the mask on yourself first before you can help everyone else. And I think we're always programming ourselves to help everyone else and burning ourselves out in the process. It's okay to choose yourself. It's not it's not selfish. It's the opposite. That's my last message, I guess.
Thank you. I love that one personally. Thank you so much. It's been, well, such a privilege. I really, really appreciate your time and the energy and the just your message. And I actually can't wait to check out your series because it sounds totally up my alley. Okay.
Bring some tissues. Thank you so much,
I,
Chelsea. It was a great conversation, and I really appreciate your time and your energy as well. And yeah, thank you.
And
Thank you,
I
thank you, thank you.
and if you heard a crash during the interview, you probably did. It was a picture falling off the wall, and so I'm really curious to go see which one it was because that's usually an interesting indication of energy going on.
Yeah, that's a sign of some sort, perhaps.
Yeah, so I will
Hmm.
go check that out. Interesting things normally happen during these interviews at times. So,
Oh, cool.
but yes, but thank you so much again. I will, please, I'd come back anytime. I'd love to have you back on, especially when the new book, the prequel comes out at Halloween. That'd be very cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chelsea.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for being here. If something stirred within you today, that's not an accident. It's a shift. To go deeper, visit thesovereignshift.ca, where you'll find breathwork audios, resources, mini courses, workshops, and programs to support your reclamation, body, mind, and soul. Like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and toss us a follow on social media if you're so inclined. And remember, your breath is your power. Your truth is your compass. Your sovereignty is the revolution. Until next time, stay sovereign.